This video will be my long-term review of the Niner Jet 9 RDO. I'll drop in the description below my first look, my midterm review, but in this video I'm going to talk about just how it's done long-term, the things that I really like about this bike, the things that I may not like about this bike, the ride qualities that literally make this the best trail bike that I have really ridden to date. The only thing that comes close is the Transition Spur. For those of you who maybe have subscribed to my channel because I used to do a lot of Giant bike reviews, I came off the Giant Trance 29, and I really like that bike. This bike, and I just want to mention that because I know a lot of people on my channel are familiar with Giant. This bike's just another level. I mean, it's just the frame stiffness is what makes this bike so fun to ride. And the Giant Trance that I had, great bike, a little flexy for me. I thought maybe it was the fork. The wheels were carbon, so it wasn't the wheels. After getting on this bike, I realized it's the frame stiffness. So I wanted to mention that as kind of a segue to the frame of this bike. And the frame stiffness gives the bike a lateral rigidity that makes it so playful. So there are a few things about the Jet 9 that make it playful, and that is going to be the geometry. So it's a 67-degree head angle. Some trail bikes in this category that are coming out have maybe a 1-degree slacker, like the Transition Spur, that's a 66. So this bike being a 67 is going to make it a little bit more agile. And also the chainstays are pretty short on this bike. And all those things come together to make this bike so lively, so playful. This bike comes in, I think at 29.5 pounds is what I weighed it. So it's not super light, but it's also not super heavy. So the whole thing's carbon. Let's take a good close-up look at the bike as I talk about some of the characteristics that I like and don't like about this bike. I want to start by mentioning one thing about this bike, and that is it's been out for a while. So Niner have not redesigned the Jet 9 in a few years, and it may be a tad dated for a few things. So like Niner uses this slacker puck that I mentioned in some of my other videos, but that slacker puck is something that slackens the head angle by 1 degree. It'd be nice that Niner wouldn't have to include that because it increases the stack a little bit. Also, I've had the RIP 9 in my possession, both the 29 and the 27.5, and it has the little ribs that come across, which is really nice for cable routing. So these come across here, and that may be a tad dated. So those two things, and also the seat angle is not quite as steep as some of the real modern trail bikes that are coming out today. However, all that being said, when you throw a leg on this bike and start riding it, you really don't even notice that. This bike rides so incredibly well. The pedaling efficiency is excellent. I'm sounding like a broken record here, but I've mentioned it so many times that the Niner CVA suspension is one of my favorite suspension designs, because when you push hard on the pedals, it firms up, and then when you're not pushing hard on the pedals, you know, when you're going downhill, it's really plush. And so that's why it's become one of my favorite suspension designs. So again, even though those qualities that I mentioned are a little bit dated, it does not matter when you're riding this bike. It is still a super fun bike to ride. And if I was a betting man, I would say probably within the next year that Niner will redesign this bike, maybe make it a little bit more like the RIP 9 as far as the frame design. But even if they don't, this bike is one that I could recommend because of the ride quality. So since this is a long-term review, let me talk about some of the components and how they've done. Braking, absolutely flawless. The Shimano XT, I don't think I've had to bleed these brakes. The shifting is just as crisp as the day I got it. And so Shimano XT is just such a solid group set. No issues with the brakes, no issues with the shifting. The only really component issue that I've had is the seat post. Now the KS Lev, I've said this before, that it is the smoothest operating dropper post that I've used. But I was on a ride a few weeks ago, and all of a sudden it started sticking. And I think what happened was I got some sediment in the seal. And so the seat post would not come up easy. And then when it started coming up, it was really rough. So all I did was partially disassemble, clean it out, put some slick honey on it, and it is working just as smooth as it did when the day I got it. So That's really the only issue that I've had as far as components. Now, I really like the DT Swiss wheels that come on this bike. These are the DT Swiss 1900s, and this wheel set has really got me back to liking alloy wheels. So I love carbon wheels, especially on my cross-country race bike. But these DT Swiss wheels are pretty laterally stiff for an alloy wheel. Now, the rims are excellent, the hubs are excellent. I'll just say it right now, DT Swiss valve stems suck. They're horrible. I've had these DT Swiss valve stems on several bikes. What happens with these valve stems is if you haven't ridden the bike in a few days, it's so hard to undo the valve stems, and I literally, I bent this one. I had to take some needle nose pliers to undo this, and I know this is minor, but I just want to say, if you get one of these bikes, just go out and buy a pair of Stan's valve stems. It'll cost you, I don't know, 20 bucks at the most, and put those in, because these, I can't even undo this. And then what happens is you unthread the valve core and all the air comes out of the tire. So I don't know why DT Swiss can make such great hubs and rims and just horrible valve stems. The Minion DHF tire that comes on this bike, it's a 2.5 and it's a great spec. It may be a little wide for some people, and some may want to put a little narrow tire on this if you want a lighter, more lively bike, but I felt like this tire was a good spec. Likewise, the 2.4 Recon is a great spec. Like the front, has a lot of grip, cornering grip, a lot of grip when you're climbing steep terrain. Again, like the front, if you wanted to make this bike a little bit lighter, if you wanted to make it more playful, you could put maybe a 2.2 to a 2.3 tire on this, but for my liking, I liked the 2.4 that comes on this bike. A few other components to highlight here. The handlebar, I mentioned in one of my other videos that I may shorten it. I actually kept it at 800. My enduro bike is 800. I really got used to 800. And so some people may want to shorten it, but I didn't. The grips, I really like these grips. They are nice and plush, and I didn't really wear them down. I'm not too hard on grips. My son, on the other hand, he's more of a gravity rider. He'll go through a pair of grips in 4 weeks. These did not wear out on me at all. I really like the flange here. It's just retro BMX to me. It really keeps your hands from sliding in. So really cool grips that come on this bike, and this Niner saddle proved to be pretty comfortable for 4-hour rides. Something else that has proved just to be flawless on this bike is the Fox suspension. So perfect spec. You know, you've got Kashima coating, you've got all the adjustments that come with the factory series Fox suspension, and I love the fork that comes on this bike and the rear shock. Now, it would be nice to see how this bike rides with the DPX2 with the piggyback reservoir. But I really didn't have any issues with this shock that comes on the bike. It's got a lot of adjustments on it, and this suspension works just as smooth as the day I got this bike. So that's going to wrap up my review series of the Niner Jet 9 RDO. If you haven't been able to tell, this is a bike that I have no problem recommending. Like I've said many times in my videos, these mid-travel 29ers are the best all-around bike you can buy. You could put some light wheels, light tires, and make it really cross-country, or you can use the stock tires and wheels that come on it and just keep it a bike that climbs really well, a bike that descends really well. I'll drop in the description below the other videos that I've made with this bike. The latest one was riding it in DuPont, North Carolina, and let me just say again that the playfulness of this bike on the descents makes it so fun to ride. I was really impressed with how this bike descended. I thought with the 67-degree head angle, the shorter wheelbase, shorter chainstays, it would be a little twitchy on the descents. It's not. It keeps the bike playful, lively, but it still has a planted feel. Not quite as planted as the Transition Spur that I have in my fleet. So those types of trail bikes that are lower, slacker than this one. But even though, again, the head angle is a little steeper, this bike is still one that I can recommend, especially for those of you who want a bike that is on the more playful side. Any questions or comments that you have about the bike, about the videos that I've made, drop those below. Thanks for watching.